$45 million. That's what I brought to the table in 3 years. And now I'm just expendable? My voice remained steady, professional. That's what I keep replaying in my mind. How I didn't scream or flip Julian's pretentious glass desk when he delivered the news with his eyes fixed on his tablet. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra. Special for you! I sat there, back straight, face composed, as if we were discussing a minor budget adjustment rather than the demolition of my career. Julian, our newly appointed CEO of just 4 months, finally glanced up, not at me, but at his watch. A Patek Philippe Aquanaut. I recognized it because I'd been on the team that negotiated the luxury Swiss retailer partnership that paid for such executive recognition gifts. Sophia, your specialized position simply doesn't align with our new streamlined operational model, he explained, his British accent somehow making the corporate execution sound more dignified. The executive committee has determined that a strategic restructuring of the innovation division would better position us for the upcoming. Save the corporate eulogy, I interrupted, rising from my chair. Message received. My name is Sophia Chen, 34, and until 9:15 that Thursday morning, I was the Director of Strategic Innovation at Meridian Global. If you're watching this video, drop a comment with your location. And don't forget to subscribe. This story has more twists than a mountain road, and you'll want to see how it ends. I exited Julian's office without another word. No desperate pleas about my mortgage on the Brooklyn brownstone I'd purchased just 8 months ago. No reminders of how I'd secured the Japanese market expansion that saved the company $45 million in failed product launches. No mention of the innovation framework that carried my name and generated a 38% increase in successful product launches across 3 divisions. 3 years of dedication, 3 years of canceled vacations, missed family gatherings, and 2 a.m. crisis calls from overseas manufacturing partners. 3 years of being the problem solver they brought in when conventional approaches failed, all erased with a strategic restructuring. I cleared out my desk while my colleagues suddenly found urgent reasons to be elsewhere. Only Zara, my deputy and closest work ally, dared approach as I packed my things. This is absolute bullshit, Soph, she whispered, her eyes darting toward the HR representative hovering nearby. Julian's been here 4 months and he's gutting the teams that built this place into what it is. Everyone knows he's just making room for his cronies from Westlake Ventures. I carefully wrapped the small jade turtle my grandmother had given me when I graduated from MIT. A family heirloom meant to bring wisdom and longevity. So much for that. It's fine, I said quietly. It's not fine. You're the only one who truly understands the Meridian Innovation Framework. They can't just— Apparently they can, I interrupted, sliding my laptop into my bag. Listen, I need you to do me a favor. The Nakamura proposal needs to be finalized by Monday. Make sure the cultural context sections are— Screw their proposal, Zara hissed. They just fired you. I zipped my bag closed. 3 years, Zara. I built systems that transformed how this company creates value. I'm not going to let them fail just because Julian is short-sighted. She hugged me fiercely. You're a better person than I am. I wasn't. I simply couldn't process what was happening yet. At home, I sat on my couch for exactly 67 minutes, staring at the exposed brick wall I'd been so proud of when I purchased this place. The sound of Brooklyn traffic floated up from the street below, life continuing as if my world hadn't just imploded. My partner Elise was at her hospital until evening. She was finishing her surgical residency. The thought of an empty apartment for the next 8 hours felt unbearable. I finally moved when my upstairs neighbor started his daily trombone practice. I made a cup of green tea I didn't drink and opened my laptop to update my LinkedIn profile, but just stared at the cursor blinking on the screen. 3 years. I joined Meridian when it was struggling to break out of its traditional product lines. The market was shifting, and they were hemorrhaging market share to more nimble competitors. My background, half Wharton MBA, half self-taught design thinking practitioner, had initially raised eyebrows. But I'd solved a critical product-market fit problem during my interview that had stumped their entire innovation team for months. "You think differently," Diane Torres, my mentor and the former chief innovation officer, had told me. "We desperately need that." Over the years, I'd transformed from a promising hire to the company's innovation linchpin. While other directors created standard growth strategies, I crafted the paradigm-shifting approaches. The cross-cultural adaptation frameworks that made Meridian the first American company to successfully penetrate Japan's insular beauty tech market. The Sustainable Materials Initiative that slashed production costs while boosting our environmental credentials. The predictive consumer behavior algorithms that identified market opportunities months before competitors. I wasn't just good at my job, I was irreplaceable. Or so I thought. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My phone buzzed. Elise. "Hey babe, caught a break between surgeries. How's the Nakamura presentation coming?" The normalcy of her question made me laugh. A hollow, strange sound. "I got fired." Silence. Then, "What?" Julian eliminated my position, called it a streamlined operational model. More silence. Then a whispered, "That pretentious British asshole who couldn't pronounce Kaizen at the company dinner?" "That's the one." "I'm coming home." "No," I said quickly. "You're in the middle of your cardio rotation. I'm fine. We'll talk tonight." After reassuring Elise I wasn't about to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge, I hung up and finally let myself cry. Not delicate tears, but ugly, raw sobs that made my chest heave and my head pound. 3 years of my creativity, my innovations, my solutions, all discarded in a 15-minute meeting with a man who couldn't even be bothered to learn the correct pronunciation of the Japanese business philosophy I'd successfully implemented. When the crying jag passed, I did what any self-respecting millennial would do. I stalked Julian Reynolds online. Oxford MBA, 6 companies in 7 years, each tenured just long enough to implement transformative restructuring and claim credit for subsequent valuation increases before moving to the next target. Meridian was just another stepping stone for him, and I was just collateral damage in his climb. I was still scrolling through his insufferable LinkedIn posts. Leadership isn't about being liked. It's about making the hard decisions others won't. Disruption, future of work, when an email notification appeared. From Alexandra Nakamura. Subject, urgent consultation opportunity, confidential. My first thought was it must be spam. But Alexandra Nakamura was very real, the CEO of Nakamura Innovation, Japan's fastest-growing beauty tech company, and Meridian's most promising potential international partner. The same partner whose proposal I'd just reminded Zara about. I opened it. "Ms. Chen, I understand you are no longer with Meridian Global as of today. I would like to discuss an urgent consultation opportunity that requires your specific expertise in cross-cultural innovation frameworks. This matter is time-sensitive and confidential. Please call my private line at your earliest convenience. Regards, Alexandra Nakamura." I stared at the email for a full minute. How did she even know I'd been let go? The timing was beyond suspicious. I called the number. "Sophia Chen," I said, trying to sound professional despite my puffy eyes and stuffy nose. "Thank you for calling so promptly," answered a crisp, accented voice. "Ms. Nakamura speaking." "How did you know about my employment status?" I asked, skipping pleasantries. A brief chuckle. News travels quickly in certain circles. Julian Reynolds has been making quite a stir with his restructuring initiatives. "I see. I'll be direct, Ms. Chen. Nakamura Innovation is preparing to award a major strategic partnership for North American market entry. Meridian Global is one of 3 finalists. Yes, I'm aware. I was leading the collaboration framework until this morning. That's precisely why I'm calling. The proposals we've received from all candidates have been inadequate. My team informs me that only your preliminary framework showed true understanding of the cultural nuances required for success. I leaned against my kitchen counter. So you want me to help you evaluate Meridian's proposal? No, Ms. Chen. I want you to complete it, but as an independent consultant for Nakamura directly. We'll pay you 5 times your Meridian salary for 3 months of work. My mouth went dry. That's substantial. We value expertise, and time is of the essence. Ms. Nakamura, I'm not sure I understand. You want me to design the market entry strategy that you were going to hire? A corporate partner to execute? Not exactly, she said. I want you to design it, and then we'll select the right partner to implement it. Perhaps Meridian, perhaps not. But the framework will be yours and ours. The implications hit me. Nakamura would own my innovation framework. If they chose another partner, Meridian would lose a contract worth tens of millions. The Japanese market that I had opened for them would slam shut. Isn't this a conflict of interest? I signed non-competes. Our legal team has reviewed your standard Meridian employment contract. Your non-compete prevents you from working for direct competitors, which we are not. It also prevents sharing proprietary information, which you won't be doing. You'll be creating new intellectual property for Nakamura. She'd done her homework. Still, something felt off. Why me specifically, Ms. Nakamura? Meridian has other talented innovators. A pause. Ms. Chen, do you know why we approached Meridian originally? Your expansion goals align with their distribution capabilities. You, specifically you. Your work on cross-cultural innovation frameworks is exactly what we need. When I learned Meridian had let you go, I realized we had an opportunity to work with you directly. My heart pounded. I need time to think about this. Of course, but please note our timeline remains unchanged. I'll need your decision by tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, mind racing. The offer was incredible. Financially, it would erase the panic of unemployment. Professionally, it would be a high-profile project with one of the most innovative companies in Asia. But it would also be a direct blow to Meridian. Without me, their proposal would be mediocre at best. Without this partnership, their quarterly projections would tank, projections that Julian had undoubtedly promised the board. The petty part of me loved the idea, but something still nagged. The timing, Nakamura reaching out hours after my firing, felt coordinated. I called Zara. Did you tell Nakamura I was fired? What? No. She sounded genuinely shocked. Why would they care? Alexandra Nakamura just offered me a contract to design their North American entry strategy independently. Holy, she whispered. Soph, that's... Wait, have you checked your company email? I can't access it anymore. Julian called an emergency executive meeting 30 minutes ago. He looked like he was going to be sick. Something about Nakamura putting their partnership decision on hold. I felt a chill. Did he say why? No, but he's been locked in the conference room with the board on a video call ever since. After hanging up, I paced my living room, puzzle pieces clicking together. Nakamura had known about my firing immediately. Julian was panicking about the Nakamura partnership. The timing wasn't coincidental. I opened my laptop again and searched for connections between Alexandra Nakamura and Julian Reynolds. Nothing obvious in public records, but then I found a Financial Times article from 8 months ago about Julian's previous company, Westlake Ventures. Nakamura Innovation withdrew. From exclusive distribution talks with Westlake Ventures yesterday, citing fundamental differences in business philosophy. Sources close to the negotiation suggest Nakamura's concerns centered around Westlake's aggressive efficiency measures under CEO Julian Reynolds. Suddenly, everything made sense. This wasn't just about hiring me for my expertise. This was Alexandra Nakamura sending Julian Reynolds a message. I was being used as a pawn in a corporate chess match. The question was, did I care? I thought about Julian checking his watch while dismantling my career, about 3 years of dedicated innovation dismissed in a 15-minute meeting, about how he couldn't even bother to learn how to pronounce Kaizen correctly despite wanting to partner with a Japanese company. No, I didn't care. In fact, I was beginning to see an opportunity. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Chen, Julian Reynolds here. There seems to have been a misunderstanding. This morning. Please call me at your convenience to discuss. I laughed out loud. The desperation was palpable, even in text form. Another text came through moments later. We're prepared to offer you your position back with a significant compensation adjustment. Too late, Julian. My doorbell rang. I opened it to find a courier holding a package. Delivery for Sophia Chen. Inside was a sleek laptop with a Nakamura Innovation logo and a handwritten note from Alexandra. For your consideration, contract papers enclosed. The laptop is yours regardless of your decision. The contract was simple, but generous. 5 times my salary. Full ownership of my frameworks credited to me, but licensed to Nakamura. Freedom to work remotely with quarterly trips to Tokyo, and a clause that specifically allowed me to accept other work afterward, including from Meridian if I chose. Alexandra was giving me leverage. My phone rang again. Julian. I let it go to voicemail. I spent the afternoon reviewing the contract and researching what had happened at Julian's previous companies. The pattern was clear. He came in, fired experienced. Specialists to cut costs, brought in his own people, claimed credit for short-term financial improvements, then moved on before the long-term damage became apparent. Elise came home at 7, dropping her bag by the door. Her surgical scrubs were wrinkled from a long day of saving lives. Tell me everything, she said, kicking off her shoes. I explained the situation. My firing, Nakamura's offer, the history between Nakamura and Julian. So, this Alexandra person is using you to get back at this Julian guy? Elise asked, her brow furrowed. Partly, I admitted, but she also genuinely needs my expertise. And you're okay with being used as a corporate weapon? I considered the question. 3 years, Elise. 3 years of solving their hardest problems, of missing dinners with you, of postponing our wedding planning. 3 years of being told I was essential. And then I'm dismissed in 15 minutes by a man who couldn't be bothered to pronounce the business terms I brought to the company. Elise took my hand. You don't have to decide tonight. But I already had. That evening, after Elise had fallen asleep, exhausted from her hospital shift, I sent 2 emails to Alexandra Nakamura. I accept your offer with one condition. I want a 1-year contract option following the initial project, not just 3 months. To Julian Reynolds, I appreciate your follow-up. Unfortunately, I've accepted another opportunity. I wish Meridian continued success. Julian's response came within minutes. Sophia, please reconsider. The Nakamura partnership is critical to our Q2 projections. We need your expertise. Name your price. I closed my laptop without responding. For the first time since that morning, I felt something other than devastation. Not quite satisfaction, not quite vindication. Power. The next morning, I signed Alexandra's revised contract with the 1-year option. By noon, my phone had 12 missed calls from Julian and various Meridian board members. I finally answered when Diane Torres, my former mentor and the previous chief innovation officer, called from her sabbatical. Sophia. Her familiar voice was strained. Julian told me what happened. I'm so sorry. Not your fault, Diane. It is, in a way. I recommended Julian to the board. I thought his financial background would help us scale globally. I never imagined he'd dismantle what we built. I softened. Diane had always been fair, always recognized talent. Water under the bridge now. He told me about Nakamura, Diane continued. You know this will devastate Meridian's quarterly results. I'm aware. A long pause. You're going to take the offer, aren't you? I already have. Another pause. I can't blame you. But Sophia, there are 300 employees at Meridian. Good people. If this partnership falls through, Julian should have thought of that before he started firing the people who make the company valuable, I interrupted, old anger flaring. You're right, Sophia. Just do what you need to do. But remember who gets hurt in corporate wars. Rarely the generals. Her words stayed with me as I set up my new workspace in the spare bedroom of my brownstone. 300 employees. People like Zara with families and bills. People who had nothing to do with Julian's decisions. Diane's words echoed in my head as I sat at my new desk later that day, staring at the Nakamura laptop. 300 employees. But then I remembered how none of them except Zara had even looked at me as I cleared out my things. How they'd all just kept their heads down, grateful. It wasn't them. Would I really sacrifice my own future out of concern for people who couldn't spare me a goodbye? My phone buzzed with a text from Zara. Julian's losing his mind. Called in all hands and basically admitted they have no idea how to complete the Nakamura proposal without you. What did you do? I didn't respond. I couldn't explain to her that I was now working for the very client she was desperately trying to impress. Instead, I immersed myself in the Nakamura project. Their market entry needs were complex, more complex than even Meridian had realized. By evening, I'd outlined a framework that made my previous work look rudimentary. This was the beauty of working directly for the client. No corporate filters, no budget constraints imposed by executives trying to pad their bonuses. Alexandra wanted the best solution possible, and she was letting me create it. When Elise came home, she found me surrounded by digital diagrams and empty tea mugs. You look happy, she said, studying my face. I looked up, surprised. I am. This is what I should have been doing all along. She sat on the edge of my desk. Julian called your old office number at the hospital today. My stomach tightened. What did he want? To talk to you. I told him you were unavailable. He mentioned something about Meridian filing an injunction. They can't, I said more confidently than I felt. I've reviewed my contract repeatedly. I'm not violating any terms. Elise nodded slowly. Just be careful, Soph. Men like that don't lose gracefully. She was right about that. The next morning, I received a formal letter from Meridian's legal department claiming I had misappropriated proprietary information and demanding I cease all work for competitors immediately. It was a bluff. I knew it, and they knew it. I forwarded it to Alexandra, who responded within minutes. Our legal team will handle this. Please continue your excellent work. By day 3 of my Nakamura contract, I had completed what would have taken 2 weeks at Meridian. No meetings, no politics, no justifying every decision to people who barely understood innovation methodology. Just pure creation. Alexandra called that afternoon. The preliminary frameworks are impressive, Sophia. I'd like you to present them to our executive team tomorrow. So soon? Time is of the essence. And there's something else. Julian Reynolds has requested a meeting with me. My heart skipped. About what? He didn't specify, but I can guess. I thought you should know. After we hung up, I sat back in my chair, conflicted. Part of me wanted Julian to beg Alexandra for mercy. Another part felt uneasy about being the cause of Meridian's potential downfall. That evening, I was preparing my presentation when Elise came into my office. She leaned against the doorframe, still in her scrubs. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. "Always. Are you doing this to get back at Meridian or because it's the right move for your career?" I paused. It was a fair question. "Both," I admitted. "Is that wrong?" "It's human," she said. "Just don't lose yourself in the revenge part. That's not who you are." The Sophia who valued loyalty above all got fired after generating $45 million in value, I replied, more bitterly than I intended. "And the Sophia I fell in love with values integrity above all," she countered gently. "Don't let Julian take that from you too." After she left, I couldn't focus on my presentation. When had my compassionate, intuitive partner become so perceptive? And why did her simple question make me feel so exposed? The next morning, I dressed carefully for my presentation at Nakamura's New York office. Black suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back. Professional. Commanding. I would show them exactly what Meridian had thrown away. Alexandra met me in the lobby of their sleek Manhattan headquarters. Ready to impress some very important people? Absolutely. As we walked toward the conference room, I spotted a familiar figure through the glass walls. Julian Reynolds, sitting alone at the table, checking his watch. I stopped cold. "You didn't mention he would be here." Alexandra's expression gave nothing away. A last-minute development. Julian requested to observe our meeting before his separate appointment with me. "This isn't what we agreed to." "No, it isn't," Alexandra acknowledged. "But sometimes, Sophia, justice is best served with witnesses." Before I could protest further, she opened the door and ushered me in. 6 executives in impeccable attire turned to look at us. Julian's face paled when he saw me. "Ms. Chen will be presenting the market entry framework she's developed for our North American initiative," Alexandra announced, as if this were completely normal. I stood frozen for a moment, anger and anxiety battling inside me. Then I looked directly at Julian, at his shocked expression, his slightly disheveled appearance, the sweat beading above his upper lip. 3 years discarded in 15 minutes. I squared my shoulders and moved to the front of the room. "Good morning. I'm Sophia Chen, your innovation strategy consultant." For the next 40 minutes, I presented the most brilliant work of my career. I explained complex cultural nuances in terms the executives could understand. I outlined innovative approaches that would protect their brand while maximizing market penetration. I answered technical questions with clarity and confidence. Not once did I look at Julian. When I finished, Alexandra spoke. "Thank you, Sophia. This is exactly what we've been looking for." She turned to the executives. "I believe this confirms our decision to work with Ms. Chen directly rather than through a corporate partner." One of the executives, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, spoke up. "What about implementation? Strategy is one thing, execution is another." "An excellent question," Alexandra nodded. "Sophia, in your professional opinion, which partner would be best equipped to implement this framework?" The room fell silent. Everyone knew what was at stake. This was the moment Julian had come for, to salvage the Meridian partnership, even if he couldn't get me back. I could feel Julian's desperate gaze. I thought about the 300 employees at Meridian, about Diane's warning, about Elise's question regarding integrity. "For implementation," I said clearly, "I would recommend Cascade Systems. Their team has the specific expertise this framework requires. Not Meridian, not Julian's company, but also not the third finalist that would have made this a complete, vindictive move, a respected competitor with the right capabilities." The woman nodded, satisfied. Julian made a strangled sound. Alexandra dismissed the executive team but asked Julian and me to stay. When the room emptied, She closed the door. Well, that was illuminating, she said, looking between us. Julian, you came here to convince me to award the partnership to Meridian despite losing your key innovator. Sophia just demonstrated precisely why that would be a mistake. Julian finally found his voice. This is corporate sabotage. We'll sue both of you. I laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a genuine, incredulous laugh. For what? For firing me and then watching me succeed elsewhere? Good luck with that. You know this will devastate Meridian, Julian hissed. The board will have my head. Perhaps they should, Alexandra said mildly. Firing the person most essential to winning a critical partnership doesn't speak well of your judgment. Julian's face flushed dark red. You orchestrated this. You poached her deliberately. I recognize talent you discarded, Alexandra corrected. There's a difference. I watched this exchange with growing unease. The revenge felt good, seeing Julian squirm, watching his career implode in real time. But something felt off about Alexandra's role in all this. May I ask a question? I interrupted. Both turned to me. Alexandra, when exactly did you decide to hire me directly instead of working through a corporate partner? A fleeting expression crossed Alexandra's face. Caution, perhaps. When I learned you were available. And how did you learn that so quickly? I was fired at 9:15 a.m. You emailed me at 11:23 a.m. the same day. Julian looked between us, confusion replacing anger. Alexandra smiled thinly. News travels fast in business circles. Or, I said carefully, you already knew. It was going to happen. You knew Julian was planning a restructure that would eliminate my position. The room went very still. That's absurd, Julian sputtered. Why would I tell a potential partner about internal reorganization plans? But something had changed in Alexandra's expression. The benevolent mentor mask had slipped, revealing something colder, more calculated. You didn't tell me directly, Alexandra said to Julian. But your CFO, Martin Williams, and my brother serve on the same philanthropic foundation board. He mentioned at a function that Meridian was undergoing significant personnel changes under your leadership, specifically that you were eliminating specialized innovation positions to improve the balance sheet before pursuing larger partnerships. My stomach sank. And you realized I would be a target. Alexandra nodded. Given your salary level and specialized role, it seemed likely. I simply prepared for the possibility. I turned to Julian. So this streamlined operational model wasn't even your original idea. You were just following a standard MBA playbook to impress the board with cost-cutting before going after bigger fish. Julian had the decency to look ashamed. And you, I continued, facing Alexandra, saw an opportunity to get what you wanted at a discount. Cut out the corporate partner entirely. Hire me directly for a fraction of what you would have paid Meridian and get the exact same expertise. Alexandra spread her hands. Business is business, Sophia. We all made our choices here. The bitter taste of manipulation filled my mouth. I'd been so focused on Julian's betrayal that I'd missed how Alexandra was using me too. Different. Methods, same fundamental view, that I was a resource to be exploited, not a person with dignity. I gathered my presentation materials. I believe this meeting is over. Sophia, Alexandra started, don't be dramatic. Your contract is still intact, I finished for her. And I'll fulfill my obligations. But let's be clear about our relationship. I'm not your weapon against Julian. I'm not your discounted solution. I'm a professional providing a service for agreed compensation, nothing more. I walked out without looking back, my hands shaking but my spine straight. In the elevator, Julian caught up to me. Sophia, wait. I kept my eyes on the floor numbers. Please, he said, his voice stripped of its usual corporate polish. I need that partnership. Without it, I turned to face him. Without it, the board will fire you just like you fired me. He nodded miserably. Probably. How many others were on your cut list? How many more valuable team members were getting 15-minute dismissals this month? Julian looked away. 22. The number hit me like a physical blow. 22 people. 22 careers disrupted so you could impress the board with your cost-cutting prowess. It wasn't personal. That's the problem, I said quietly. It should have been personal. We're people, Julian, not line items. I exited the elevator and walked out into the Manhattan sunshine, a daze settling over me. My triumphant moment turned to ashes. I wasn't a hero getting justice. I was just another pawn in a game between powerful executives. At home, I found myself standing on my small balcony overlooking the Brooklyn streets below. The afternoon sun cast long shadows between buildings as I tried to process everything that had happened. My phone had been buzzing incessantly. Calls. From Julian. From Meridian board members. Even one from Alexandra. I silenced them all. The revelation that I was merely a pawn in a larger corporate chess match left a bitter taste. I'd gone from feeling powerful to feeling used in the span of a single meeting. But I still had a contract, and more importantly, I still had my expertise. No one could take that away. I called Elise. "Hey," she answered, the sounds of a busy hospital in the background. "How did it go?" "Complicated," I sighed. "Can we talk when you get home?" "Of course. Is it bad?" I watched a flock of pigeons scatter from a nearby rooftop. Not bad, just illuminating. After hanging up, I sat at my desk and stared at the Nakamura laptop. The contract was still incredibly generous. 5 times my Meridian salary for work I could do in my sleep. But now I understood the true cost, becoming a weapon in Alexandra's arsenal against Julian. My doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. When I opened it, I found Zara standing there looking nervous. "Are you going to invite me in, or should I just stand here looking suspicious to your neighbors?" I stepped aside. "How did you know where I live?" "I planned your goodbye party last year when you bought this place, remember?" She walked in, eyes scanning my apartment. "Nice. Very you." "Thanks," I said warily. "Why are you here, Zara?" She dropped onto my couch. "Meridian is imploding. Julian had another emergency meeting after he got back from wherever he was this morning. He looked like someone had run over his dog. And you came all the way to Brooklyn to tell me this because I need to know what you did," she said bluntly, "and what you're planning to do next." I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "What makes you think I did anything?" "Please," she scoffed. "Julian fires you, then has a mysterious meeting, comes back looking devastated, and suddenly the Nakamura partnership is under strategic reconsideration. Plus, you haven't answered any of my texts." I considered how much to tell her. Zara had always been loyal, but she was still a Meridian employee. "I took a consulting position," I said carefully, "with a company that values innovation expertise." Her eyes widened. "Nakamura? You're working for Nakamura now?" I didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Holy shit," she whispered. "So that's why. But Sophia, what about the Meridian proposal? What about our jobs?" "What about my job?" I countered. "The one Julian eliminated after I brought in 45 million? Zara flinched. "You know I think that was wrong. But there are 20 people on my team who had nothing to do with that decision. If Meridian loses Nakamura..." The guilt I'd been suppressing surged back. "I didn't tell Nakamura not to partner with Meridian." "But you didn't recommend them either, did you?" I walked to the kitchen to make tea. A habit when I needed to think. "It's business, Zara. Nothing personal." She followed me. "That sounds exactly like something Julian would say." The comparison stung. "That's not fair. isn't it? Look, I get it. Julian screwed you over. But becoming like him won't fix anything. I slammed the kettle down harder than necessary. I'm not like him. I'm doing the work I was hired to do. If my professional recommendation doesn't favor Meridian, that's because they lost their best innovator. Zara studied me for a long moment. The Sophia I know wouldn't use her talent as a weapon, even against people who hurt her. She'd find a smarter way. After Zara left, her words echoed in my mind. Was I becoming like Julian, calculating, coldly strategic, seeing people as means to an end? The thought was unsettling. Later that evening, I finally told Elise everything. The confrontation with Julian and Alexandra, the manipulation from both sides, the revelation that 22 more people were slated for Julian's chopping block. "So what now?" she asked. When I finished, curled beside me on our couch, I stared at the ceiling. I don't know. I'm still legally obligated to Nakamura. And honestly, the work itself is fascinating, but knowing how Alexandra orchestrated this. Elise took my hand. What would make this right for you? Not what would hurt Julian most, or what would satisfy Alexandra, but what would make you feel whole again? I considered her question for a long time. Creating something meaningful, I finally said, knowing that those 22 others won't lose their jobs the way I did. Building something that values people for their contributions, not just their cost on a balance sheet. Then maybe that's your answer. The next morning, I called Diane Torres. My former mentor answered on the first ring, as if she'd been expecting my call. "Sophia," she greeted me. "I heard about the Nakamura meeting. Julian is, well, desperate doesn't begin to cover it." "I'm not calling about Julian," I said. "I'm calling about Meridian. The real Meridian, the company we built together." "I'm listening." "Julian is planning to cut 22 more people by the end of the month. Specialists mostly, people with deep institutional knowledge." Diane sighed heavily. I suspected something like this when the board started pushing for bigger partnerships. Cut costs, boost short-term metrics, secure bigger deals. It will destroy the company in the long run. "I know," I agreed, "but you still hold influence. You're still the founder emeritus. You still have shares and board connections." A long pause. "What exactly are you suggesting?" I outlined my idea. Not revenge, but reconstruction. A way to save what mattered about Meridian while letting Julian face the consequences of his own decisions. "It's risky," Diane said when I finished. "The board won't easily admit they made a mistake with Julian." "They will if the alternative is losing their biggest potential partnership and watching their stock price plummet," I countered. She chuckled. "You always did think 3 moves ahead. Let me make some calls." My next call was to Alexandra. She sounded wary when she answered. "Ms. Chen, I hope you've reconsidered your dramatic exit yesterday." "I'm fulfilling my contract obligations," I assured her. "But I want to discuss the implementation partner recommendation. We've already begun discussions with Cascade based on your recommendation. I'd like you to reconsider." A pause. "And why would I do that?" "Because I have a better solution. One that gives you everything you want without the risk of working with a partner who doesn't fully understand my framework." "I'm listening." I explained my proposition. By the end of the call, Alexandra was intrigued enough to agree to a meeting the following day. "This is unexpected," she admitted. "But if it delivers as you describe, it could be advantageous for Nakamura." "It will," I promised. "Just keep an open mind." After hanging up, I spent hours refining my presentation, creating financial projections, and preparing for every possible objection. Around midnight, Elise brought me tea and kissed the top of my head. "You haven't looked this energized since—" "You cracked the Japanese market," she observed. I looked up from my laptop. This feels right. For the first time since Julian fired me, I feel like I'm building something instead of tearing something down. That's the Sophia I know, she smiled. The one who creates rather than destroys. The next morning I met with Alexandra and her executive team at Nakamura's offices. This time, I controlled the narrative from the start. "Thank you for meeting with me," I began, standing confidently at the head of the conference table. "Yesterday, I recommended Cascade Systems as your implementation partner. Today, I'm proposing a better alternative, one that gives you direct access to the specialized talent you need without the corporate overhead." I outlined my vision for Helix Innovation Partners, a new specialized consultancy comprised of top innovation experts. I would lead it, bringing in the best minds from various industries, starting with the specialist Julian was planning to cut from Meridian. "This gives you direct access to elite talent without filtering through corporate bureaucracy," I explained. "You get the best implementation team possible, led by the person who designed the framework in the first place." The sharp-eyed executive from yesterday, who I now knew was Kimiko Tanaka, Nakamura's global operations director, leaned forward. "This company doesn't exist yet. You're asking us to partner with a hypothetical entity." "Not hypothetical," I countered, sliding folders across the table. Helix Innovation Partners was registered yesterday. I've secured preliminary commitments from 7 innovation specialists. The business plan, financial projections, and team profiles are in your folders. Alexandra studied the materials, her expression unreadable. "This is ambitious, Sophia. You're essentially asking us to be your first client for a company that hasn't proven itself yet. You've already proven that you value my expertise enough to hire me directly," I reminded her. "I'm offering you that same expertise, backed by a team of specialists who understand my methodology intimately. And you'd be getting us at founding client rates." Kimiko looked skeptical. "And Meridian? What happens to our discussions with them?" "That's entirely your decision," I said carefully. "But consider this. Would you rather work with a company in turmoil, losing its key innovators, or with the innovators themselves?" The meeting continued for 2 hours as we discussed details, risks, and timelines. By the end, Alexandra looked impressed despite herself. "You've clearly put significant thought into this," she acknowledged. "We'll need to discuss internally, but I'm intrigued by the possibility." As I packed up my presentation materials, Alexandra held me back after the others left. "This isn't what I expected from you," she said. "I'm not the weapon you thought you were getting," I replied evenly. "I'm a builder, not a destroyer." She studied me for a moment. "You're more interesting than I anticipated, Sophia Chen. I'll be in touch with our decision by tomorrow." I left Nakamura's offices feeling lighter than I had in days. Whether they accepted my proposal or not, I had reclaimed my narrative. I wasn't just reacting to Julian's betrayal or Alexandra's manipulation. I was creating something new. My next stop was Diane's apartment in the Upper West Side. She'd arranged a small gathering of key Meridian stakeholders, 2 board members she trusted, the head of product development, and, surprisingly, the company's largest investor, Eleanor Reed. "Sophia," Eleanor greeted me, her handshake firm. "Diane speaks very highly of you. She says you have a proposition that might save Meridian from its current leadership challenges." I spent the next hour outlining the situation, Julian's systematic dismantling of Meridian's innovation capacity, the 22 specialists on his cut list, the risk to the Nakamura partnership, and my proposed solution. Helix Innovation Partners would work alongside Meridian, not against it, I explained. We'd handle the specialized innovation while Meridian focuses on its core strengths in production and distribution. It's a symbiotic relationship that gives both companies what they need. "And Julian?" one of the board members asked. "That's for the board to decide," I said diplomatically, "but I'd suggest his particular skill set might be better applied elsewhere." Eleanor's eyes sparkled with amusement. "A very gracious way of suggesting we fire him." The numbers speak for themselves, I replied, displaying financial projections showing Meridian's trajectory under Julian's leadership compared to my proposed alternative. By the end of the meeting, Eleanor was convinced. As Meridian's largest investor, her opinion carried significant weight with the board. I invested in Meridian because of its innovative approach, she said. Julian's cost-cutting might look good on quarterly reports, but it's destroying the company's soul. Your solution preserves what makes Meridian valuable while creating a new model for specialized innovation. It's elegant. As everyone was leaving, Diane pulled me aside. The board is meeting tomorrow morning. Eleanor will present your proposal. It won't be easy. Julian has allies. But with her backing, we have a fighting chance. Thank you for arranging this, I said, genuinely grateful. She squeezed my hand. You could have walked away, taken Alexandra's money, and left Meridian to its fate. The fact that you didn't says everything about who you are, Sophia. That night, I couldn't sleep. Too many possibilities, too many uncertainties. I paced our small balcony, watching the lights of Manhattan twinkle across the river. Elise joined me, wrapping a blanket around both our shoulders. Penny, for your thoughts? What if this doesn't work? I whispered. What if the board sides? With Julian? What if Nakamura rejects my proposal? What if I've just created an elaborate plan that falls apart at the first hurdle? Then you'll adapt, she said simply. That's what innovators do, right? They see possibilities where others see problems. I leaned against her, drawing strength from her unwavering confidence in me. When did you get so wise? Sometime between cutting open chest cavities and falling in love with a brilliant innovation strategist, she smiled. The next morning brought a flurry of activity. First, a call from Alexandra. We're in, she said without preamble. Nakamura will contract with Helix Innovation Partners as our North American market entry strategist and implementation partner. The terms you proposed are acceptable, with one addition. We want right of first refusal on your services for future Asian market projects. Relief and excitement flooded through me. Agreed. Thank you for your trust, Alexandra. It's not about trust, she said pragmatically. It's about results. I believe you'll deliver them. Coming from Alexandra, that was high praise indeed. Next came a text from Diane. Board meeting started. We'll update you soon. I spent the next 2 hours alternating between working on Nakamura's framework and obsessively checking my phone. Finally, Diane called. It's done, she said, her voice tired but satisfied. Julian is out. The board voted 6-3 to remove him as CEO, effective immediately. I sat down, suddenly lightheaded. And the partnership with Helix? Approved, pending final contract negotiations. And Sophia? The board wants to meet with you next week to discuss the transition. After hanging up, I stood in my apartment, trying to process everything that had happened. In the span of a week, I'd gone from successful innovation director to fired employee to founder of my own company with a major client and a partnership with my former employer. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You won. Congratulations. Julian. I didn't respond. This wasn't about winning or losing. It was about building something better from the ashes of betrayal. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of activity. I reached out to the 22 specialists on Julian's cut list, offering them positions at Helix. 17 accepted immediately. The others needed more convincing, but by week's end, I had assembled a dream team of innovation. Experts, people whose talents Julian had been prepared to discard as unnecessary expenses. Zara was one of the first to join. You could have just taken revenge, she said during our first official Helix team meeting in my living room. Instead, you created something that saves all of us. That's why I followed you. We're not just saved, I corrected her. We're free. Free to innovate without bureaucracy. free to create value without constantly justifying our existence to people who don't understand what we do. Meridian's board appointed Diane as interim CEO while they searched for a permanent replacement. Her first official act was to sign the partnership agreement with Helix. "This is an unprecedented model," she acknowledged as we finalized the terms. "A specialist innovation firm working symbiotically with a traditional company. If it works, it will work," I assured her. "Because it recognizes that innovation isn't just a department or a process, it's people. Specific people with specific talents that can't be easily replaced or eliminated for short-term gains." 1 month after my firing, I stood in the newly leased Helix offices in Dumbo, overlooking the Brooklyn Bridge. Our team of 23 specialists was busy setting up workstations, arguing good-naturedly about methodologies, and building the foundation of something extraordinary. Elise joined me by the windows, slipping her arm around my waist. "How does it feel, being the founder instead of the employee?" I considered the question. Terrifying, exhilarating, right. Worth getting fired for? I laughed. "Ask me again in a year." She kissed my cheek. "I'm proud of you, Sophia. You turned a crisis into an opportunity, not just for yourself, but for everyone Julian was ready to discard." Looking around at my team, brilliant minds freed from corporate constraints, ready to create innovative solutions that would change industries, I felt a sense of purpose stronger than anything I'd experienced at Meridian. "You know what's funny?" I mused. "Julian actually did me a favor. If he hadn't fired me, I'd still be fighting for resources and recognition within a system that fundamentally undervalued innovation. Now we're building a company where innovation is the whole point." Elise smiled. "The best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting better." As I watched my team work, I realized she was right. This wasn't revenge, it was renaissance, a rebirth of possibility from the ashes of rejection. Julian had eliminated my role, but in doing so, he'd forced me to create something far more powerful than the position I'd lost. Sometimes the greatest opportunities arise from our darkest moments. Sometimes being undervalued leads us to create our own value. And sometimes, just sometimes, getting fired is the best thing that could ever happen to you, if you have the courage to build something better from the wreckage. 6 months later, I found myself standing on a stage at the annual Innovation Summit in San Francisco, adjusting the microphone as I prepared to deliver the keynote address. The audience of over 800 industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and innovators fell silent as the lights dimmed. 6 months ago, I was fired from my position. As Director of Strategic Innovation, I began, letting the words hang in the air. My specialized role no longer aligned with the company's streamlined operational model. At least, that's what I was told during a 15-minute meeting where my boss couldn't even look me in the eye. A murmur rippled through the crowd. This wasn't the typical keynote opener they were expecting. "What my former employer failed to understand," I continued, "is that innovation isn't a department you can restructure. It's not a line item you can optimize. Innovation is fundamentally human. It's about people who see possibilities where others see problems. And when you discard those people, you don't just lose their current contributions, you lose entire futures." I clicked to my first slide, showing Helix Innovation Partners' remarkable growth trajectory. Today, Helix Innovation Partners employs 47 innovation specialists across 3 countries. We've completed 14 major projects for clients ranging from startups to Fortune 500 companies. Our partnership model has been featured in Harvard Business Review, and most importantly, I paused for effect, we've proven that there's a better way to structure innovation in the modern economy. For the next 30 minutes, I outlined the Helix model, a specialized consultancy of innovation experts who partnered with companies for specific initiatives while maintaining their independence and creative freedom. I explained how this model protected both the innovators and the companies from the vulnerabilities of traditional employment, while delivering superior results for clients. Innovation thrives at the edges, I concluded. It lives in the questions no one else is asking, in the problems everyone else has accepted as unsolvable. Our job as innovators isn't just to solve today's problems, it's to imagine tomorrow's possibilities. And that requires a freedom that traditional corporate structures rarely provide. The applause was thunderous. As I stepped off stage, I was immediately surrounded by attendees eager to discuss potential collaborations or simply to share their own stories of corporate disillusionment and reinvention. Later that evening at the conference reception, I found a moment of quiet by the window overlooking San Francisco Bay. The city lights twinkled below, mirroring the stars above. "Impressive speech," came a voice behind me. I turned to find Eleanor. Reed, Meridian's largest investor, and now the chair of their board. "Eleanor," I smiled. "I didn't know you were attending." "I make it a point to keep tabs on disruptive forces in the industry," she said, her eyes twinkling. "You've certainly become one." "How are things at Meridian?" I asked. We maintained our partnership, but I deliberately kept some professional distance to allow the new CEO, Thomas Garcia, to establish his leadership without my shadow looming. "Recovering," she said frankly. "Thomas is solid, not as visionary as you, but he understands the value of innovation. The partnership with Helix has been essential to our survival." "I'm glad to hear it." She sipped her champagne. "Julian has been making noise in the industry, claiming he was sabotaged by you and Alexandra Nakamura." I laughed. "Of course he is. Heaven forbid he accept responsibility for his own decisions." "He's taken a position at Westlake Ventures again," Eleanor continued. "Apparently they're desperate enough to give him another chance." "Good for him," I said, meaning it. "Everyone deserves a second chance. I just hope he's learned something." Eleanor studied me for a moment. "You know, most people in your position would still be bitter. You lost a career you spent years building. And gained something better," I countered. "Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as losses." She raised her glass in a toast. "To beautiful disguises, then." After the conference, I flew directly to Tokyo for quarterly meetings with Nakamura Innovation. Their North American market entry had been spectacularly successful, with sales exceeding projections by 28% in the first 2 quarters. Alexandra had become one of Helix's strongest advocates, referring 3 new clients to us in the past month, alone. I checked into my hotel, fighting jet lag as I prepared for tomorrow's presentation. My phone buzzed with a text from Elise. "Killed it at surgery today. How was your keynote?" I smiled, typing back. "Killed it too. No casualties, though." Another buzz. "Tokyo tomorrow?" "Yes. Missing you." "Miss you too, but so proud." 3. Marriage proposals waiting when you get back. I laughed. After years of postponing our wedding due to work demands, we'd finally set a date for next spring. The irony wasn't lost on me that it took losing my secure corporate job to finally create space for this personal milestone. My phone rang. Zara, now Helix's Director of Client Partnerships. "Boss," she greeted me. "Just checking you got in safely." "Just barely conscious," I admitted. "How are things back home?" "Controlled chaos, as usual," she laughed. "The Horizon Media project team is requesting more time. The Singapore proposal is coming together beautifully, and Julian Reynolds reached out." I sat up straighter. "Julian? What did he want?" "To meet with you." He was vague about details. Just said it was a matter of mutual interest. I frowned. "Interesting timing. I just heard he's back at Westlake." "Want me to tell him you're busy until 2030? "No," I said after a moment's consideration. "Set something up for when I'm back. Might as well hear what he has to say." After hanging up, I stood by the hotel window, gazing out at Tokyo's neon skyline. What could Julian possibly want? Redemption? Collaboration? Revenge of his own? Whatever. It was, I was no longer the vulnerable employee he could dismiss with a wave of his hand. I was Sophia Chen, founder and CEO of Helix Innovation Partners. I had nothing to fear from Julian Reynolds. The next morning, I met with Alexandra and the Nakamura executive team to review the North American market performance and discuss expansion plans for the coming year. Your framework has exceeded our expectations, Alexandra acknowledged as we reviewed the sales figures. The cultural adaptation elements have been particularly effective. I'm glad to hear it, I said. But I think we can push further. The initial entry focused on metropolitan centers with significant Asian populations, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles. The next phase should target markets where we don't have that cultural advantage. Kimiko Tanaka, who had initially been skeptical of Helix, was now one of our strongest advocates. What would that require in terms of adaptation? For the next hour, I outlined a strategy for penetrating markets where Nakamura had less natural cultural resonance. By the end of the presentation, the executive team was energized by the possibilities. As the meeting concluded, Alexandra held me back. A word in private, Sophia? When the room emptied, she gestured for me to sit. I've received an interesting proposal from Westlake Ventures. They're seeking a partnership similar to our arrangement. My stomach tightened. Julian's doing, I assume? She nodded. He seems to have learned something from his failure at Meridian, or perhaps he's simply trying to replicate what worked for us. What did you tell him? That I would consider it, she said carefully. Westlake has resources that could be valuable to us, but I wanted to discuss it with you first, given your history. I appreciated her consideration, even if it was calculated. Our contract doesn't give Helix exclusivity, I pointed out. You're free to partner with whomever you choose. True, but your insight is valuable to me. What's your assessment? Of Julian as a potential partner? I considered the question carefully. Julian is brilliant at short-term optimization. If that's what you need, he could be useful. But he fundamentally misunderstands the human element of innovation. He sees people as replaceable parts in a machine. Alexandra nodded slowly. That aligns with my impression. Thank you for your candor. As I left Nakamura's Tokyo headquarters, I wondered if Julian's meeting request was related to this development. Was he trying to neutralize me as a potential obstacle to his deal with Nakamura? Or was something else at play? I spent the rest of my time in Tokyo focused on our clients, but Julian's shadow lingered at the edges of my thoughts. By the time I boarded my flight home 3 days later, I was actually looking forward to our meeting, if only to resolve the mystery. Elise met me at JFK, her surgical scrubs exchanged for jeans and a sweater. Welcome home, world traveler. She greeted me with a kiss. On the taxi ride back to Brooklyn, I filled her in on the Julian situation. So he's trying to copy your model, she mused. Imitation, flattery, all that? Maybe, I said. Or maybe he's looking for a way to undermine Helix. Our success makes his failure at Meridian more glaring. She squeezed my hand. Just remember who you are now. You're not his employee anymore. You're his equal. Actually, based on industry buzz, you're his superior. The meeting with Julian was scheduled for the following Monday at a neutral location, a private room at an upscale Manhattan restaurant. I arrived deliberately 7 minutes late, a small but satisfying reversal of power dynamics. Julian stood when I entered, his expression unreadable. Sophia, thank you for agreeing to meet. Julian, I nodded, taking my seat. I'm curious what constitutes our mutual interest. He smiled thinly. Direct as ever. I've always appreciated that about you. Strange way of showing it. A flash of discomfort crossed his face. I deserve that. My handling of your departure from Meridian was regrettable. Regrettable, I repeated. Interesting choice of words. Not wrong or mistaken, just regrettable. Would you prefer a formal apology? He asked, his tone carefully neutral. I'd prefer authenticity, I replied. But let's move on. You didn't request this meeting to apologize for something that happened 6 months ago. Julian straightened his tie, a nervous habit I remembered from our Meridian days. You're right. I'm here to discuss a potential collaboration between Westlake Ventures and Helix Innovation Partners. I nearly choked on my water. Excuse me? Westlake is positioning itself as a global innovation hub, he continued. We have the capital and the corporate connections. Helix has the specialized talent and methodology. Together, we could create something significant. I studied him, looking for the trap. Why would I ever consider partnering with you after what happened at Meridian? Because it makes business sense, he said simply. Our strengths complement each other. My mistake at Meridian was trying to eliminate specialized innovation when I should have been leveraging it differently. And now you want to leverage Helix? I want to collaborate with Helix, he corrected. Significant difference. I sat back, processing his proposal. So this is why you're pursuing Nakamura as well. You're trying to recreate my client base. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. Alexandra told you about our discussions? We have a transparent relationship, I said, not mentioning that Alexandra had clearly withheld information from Julian as well. Unlike some professional relationships I've experienced. Julian had the grace to look uncomfortable. The past is past, Sophia. I'm talking about the future. Helix has proven there's a market for specialized innovation services. Westlake has the resources to help you scale globally. Helix is doing quite well on our own, I pointed out. We've doubled in size in 6 months. And with Westlake's backing, you could double again in half that time. I studied him, trying to understand his angle. What exactly are you proposing, Julian? He slid a folder across the table. A strategic partnership. Westlake provides capital, corporate connections, and operational infrastructure. Helix maintains its independence but gains access to our global network. We take a minority stake, 30%, but you remain in full control of operations and methodology. I didn't touch the folder. And what do you personally get out of this, Julian? His smile turned rueful. Redemption, perhaps? The Meridian situation wasn't my finest hour. This could be a chance to demonstrate that I've learned from my mistakes. Or a chance to get close enough to Helix to dismantle it from within, I countered. You don't trust me, he observed. Understandable. But the terms of the agreement would protect Helix's autonomy. You can have your legal team verify that. I finally picked up the folder. I'll review your proposal, but I want to be clear. Any partnership would require absolute transparency and ironclad protections for my team. I wouldn't expect anything. Less from you? He said, sounding almost admiring. As I left the restaurant, my mind was spinning. Julian's proposal was unexpected, but what truly surprised me was that I was actually considering it. 6 months ago, I would have laughed in his face. But now? The potential strategic advantages were undeniable if the risks could be mitigated. Back at the Helix offices, I called an emergency leadership meeting with my 5 directors, including Zara. I laid out Julian's proposal without editorial comment, wanting their unbiased reactions. Are you seriously considering this? Zara asked, incredulous. After what he did to you? To all of us? I'm considering all options for Helix's growth, I said carefully. That includes evaluating unexpected opportunities objectively. Marcus Chen, no relation, our Director of Innovation Methodology, frowned thoughtfully. The global network would accelerate our expansion plans. We've been discussing Singapore and London offices. Westlake already has established presences there. But at what cost? Countered Iris Wong, our Director of Talent Development. Our culture is what makes Helix special. Introducing Westlake's influence could compromise that. The debate continued for over an hour, passionate but productive. By the end, we had identified key concerns and potential advantages, but no clear consensus. "I'll make the final decision," I assured them. "But I wanted your perspectives first. This affects all of us." After everyone left, I sat alone in our conference room, staring at the Manhattan skyline through the windows. Julian's proposal represented a crossroads for Helix. The path of partnership offered faster growth and expanded reach, but with the risk of compromising our independence. The path of continued self-reliance meant slower growth, but preserved our autonomy and values. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane. "Heard about Julian's proposal. Call me." I dialed immediately. "Julian moves fast," she commented when she answered. "I just heard about his return to Westlake last week." "What's your take?" I asked, valuing her insight as both a mentor and industry veteran. "Julian is a survivor," she said thoughtfully. "Meridian damaged his reputation, but he's rebuilding. Aligning with Helix would accelerate that process considerably." "So, this is about image rehabilitation for him?" "Partly," she agreed. "But I also think he genuinely recognizes his mistake now. Watching Helix succeed where he failed has been educational." I sighed. "The question is whether he's learned the right lessons." "The only way to know that is to test him," Diane pointed out, "but carefully, with proper safeguards." After hanging up, I walked the empty office, running my fingers along the desks of my team members. Each space reflected its occupant: creative chaos or meticulous organization, family photos or inspirational quotes, technical manuals or art books. This diversity of thought and approach was Helix's greatest strength, the very thing Julian had once dismissed as unnecessary complexity. Could I risk that essence for faster growth? Should I partner with the man who had once discarded me and would have discarded 22 others if I hadn't intervened? I thought about what Elise had said the night before. "You're not his employee anymore. You're his equal." Perhaps that was the key. I didn't need to fear Julian anymore, but I also didn't need to reject a potentially valuable opportunity out of lingering resentment. I could engage with him as an equal, with clear eyes and strong boundaries. The next morning, I called Julian. "I've reviewed your proposal," I told him. "I'm prepared to discuss a modified version that would better protect Helix's core values and independence." "I'm listening," he said, sounding cautiously optimistic. "Not over the phone," I replied. "I want a formal meeting with our respective legal teams present, and I want Alexandra Nakamura to attend as a neutral third party." "Alexandra?" I questioned, surprised. "Why involve her?" "Because she has relationships with both our companies and a vested interest in seeing innovations succeed broadly in the market. She'll help keep us both honest." There was a long pause. "You're testing me," he finally said. "Yes," I admitted. "I need to know if you're truly interested in a fair partnership or if this is about control." Another pause. "All right, set it up." The meeting was scheduled for the following week at Nakamura's New York offices. I spent the intervening days consulting with our legal team, my leadership team, and key advisors like Diane and Eleanor. By the time I walked into the meeting, I was prepared for any scenario. Alexandra greeted Julian and me with professional neutrality. "This is an unexpected development," she observed as we took our seats at the conference table. "Life is full of surprises," I replied, meeting Julian's eyes across the table. For the next 3 hours, we negotiated terms. Julian's initial proposal underwent significant revisions. Westlake's ownership stake was reduced to 20%. Helix would maintain complete operational autonomy. A special board would be established to govern the partnership, with equal representation from both companies plus one independent member, Alexandra, if she was willing. "This is substantially different from what I proposed," Julian noted as we reviewed the final terms. Yes, I agreed unapologetically. Your proposal prioritized Westlake's interests. This balances the equation. He studied me for a long moment, then surprised me with a genuine smile. You've become quite the negotiator, Sophia. I've always been a good negotiator, Julian. You just never had to negotiate with me before. You could simply decide my fate in a 15-minute meeting. His smile faded. I deserved that. Yes, you did, I said evenly. But that's the last time I'll mention it if we move forward with this partnership. We can't build something new if we're constantly looking backward. Alexandra, who had been observing our exchange with interest, spoke up. These terms seem equitable to both parties. The question is whether you can truly collaborate given your history. Julian looked directly at me. I believe we can. Sophia has proven me wrong before, about the value of specialized innovation, about her capabilities. As a leader, I've learned to bet on her rather than against her. It was as close to a genuine apology as Julian Reynolds was likely to ever offer. And somehow, it was enough. Then I accept these terms, I said, extending my hand across the table. As we shook hands, I realized how far I'd come from that devastating morning 6 months ago. I had transformed from a discarded employee to a founder, from a victim of corporate restructuring to an architect of a new model for innovation. And now I was choosing to partner, as an equal, with the very person who had once deemed me expendable. Not out of forgiveness or sentimentality, but because it was the right strategic move for the company I had built from the ashes of rejection. The company that now employed dozens of brilliant minds who might otherwise have been, strategically, realigned out of opportunities to create and contribute. Sometimes the best response to being undervalued isn't just proving your worth, it's redefining the entire system of valuation. And sometimes the people who hurt you become the unwitting catalysts for your greatest transformations. As we left Alexandra's office, Julian paused. For what it's worth, firing you was the biggest professional mistake of my career. I smiled. I know, and partnering with me will be the smartest decision you ever made, as long as you remember why Helix exists in the first place. To protect innovation by protecting innovators, he recited, showing he had actually read our mission statement. Exactly. Don't forget it this time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.